This bill goes to the heart of our values. But it also recognizes it's in our nation's interest to bring people out of the shadows, that there's got to be a way forward that recognizes there is a penalty for being here illegally. On the other hand, that recognizes that each person has got worth and dignity. Our soul is constantly renewed. Our spirit is invigorated when people come here and realize the blessings of America. And so the bill that we've worked hard to craft is an important piece of legislation that addresses the needs of a failed system.
I think the most important thing is there is no single undocumented immigrant. There are some that get all the headlines who are gang members, here literally to exploit people and to commit crimes. Those are quite costly people to have in the United States. Then there are people here who came in illegally, they're living, they're going to work every day, their kids are going to school. At the local level, you see the greatest tensions about the costs of the undocumented. They are receiving police protection, that costs money. Fire protection, that costs money.
They get sick. Where do? They go to the emergency room. A hidden cost. Every hospital in the U.S. must treat someone who comes to them and needs medical care. And the cost of that medical care comes back to the taxpayer.
Undocumented children who reside in a school district, they're entitled to go to school under the Supreme Court decision called Plower versus Doe. People will say, oh, they're going to school and that's a burden.
So yes, undocumented immigrants cost us money, just like any other resident of the United States of America. The question then is, how is that cost offset through contributions?
They pay taxes like everybody else. When you buy food or you buy gas, there's gas tax. Taxes are in your rent, real estate taxes. Irrespective of whether you're undocumented, you're paying that.
There's something called the ITIN, which allows people to file taxes even if they don't have a Social Security card, even if they don't have legal status. And a lot of people do that. In fact, when you go to immigration court, one of the first things the judges will ask you if you're applying for relief is, does your client pay taxes?
I think people have the impression that an undocumented immigrant is just going to collect benefit after benefit. But in fact, the laws are written to say you as an undocumented immigrant cannot get Social Security, cannot get Medicare.
Literally billions and billions of dollars are paid in by undocumented workers who don't necessarily ever get the benefit of that back again, and they've been paying in for decades.
Their U.S.-born children are eligible as U.S. citizens for any number of benefits, and welfare is always understood and analyzed as a household-based program. So it benefits the whole family. So there is a cost, but it's actually lower than it is for comparable legal immigrants.
So ironically, there are a lot of people who are working sort of in the shadows, as it were, but they're at the same time paying taxes and being good quote-unquote citizens.
Whether immigrants cost the country or benefit the country, the answer is both at the same time. We cost our country during the time that we're going to school, that we then later work and pay back in our taxes. Well, immigrants do the same thing.
They're here, on balance they're working, and they're providing as a result the fruits of their labor to the economy. They're buying the products that other people are making, and so just as a native-born citizen contributes to the economy, so do the undocumented.
Many of them started out as agricultural workers. Many of them started out in construction, in whatever lesser skilled positions they could get. And the reason they can get them is that we have a shortage of U.S. workers who are willing, available to do these jobs.
So let's say tomorrow the administration says we're going to deport every single undocumented immigrant worker in the United States. The country would lose $551 billion in economic activity, $245 billion in gross domestic output. These are significant impacts to not just the economy in an abstract national way, but ultimately the American worker and their family.
Here's what we know. If they're deported or precluded from doing that work, one of two things is going to happen. Either Americans are going to step in and take that job. I think the evidence is it won't happen at the same wages. It's going to have to be a lot better pay to make that happen. So the peaches or the strawberries or whatever you're picking is going to be a lot more expensive. Or, more likely, those folks will be in another country. They'll be picking crops in another country. We're going to get those crops, bring them to our supermarkets and buy them. The value of the production will end up abroad. The income will end up abroad. And we'll be complaining about the fact that we import those crops when we should be doing them in America. But there are no cheap ones here. And the bigger lesson is those immigrants are not competing with American workers because they're here. They're already competing with American workers, whether across the street or across an ocean. It's a global economy. And if we're going to have that competition, we might as well get the benefits of it by having it here.
Clearly, you need a comprehensive immigration reform system. You've clearly got to have some path to citizenship for the 11 million folks who are here illegally. And the reason why we have 11 million illegal immigrants in this country is because we did not allow for 30 years enough immigrants to come here legally to do the jobs that we in this economy desperately needed to have done.
You've often heard said that they should go outside and get in line. I'm going to tell you a secret. There is no line.
There is no legal path for people to come in to do all the jobs that we don't want to do, or we don't want our children or grandchildren don't want to do.
So you've got 11 million people here undocumented. What do? The two ends of the spectrum are pretty simple. One end is you enforce current law. What that would mean is we would have to find all 11 million. We would then have to give them a hearing in an administrative court. We would then have to deport them and send them back to their country of origin. That's current law, and if you were serious about not having undocumented immigrants, that's what you'd have to do. We've looked at what that looks like. It looks like about $200 or $300 billion to do that at any kind of speed. You'd need about 30,000 new administrative judges. You need about 300,000 beds in a bunch of new detention centers. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of big government. And worse, you'd have to go find people, which means you'd have the police walking into businesses and homes all across America. And the bottom line is you'd take about 6% of the U.S. labor force and say, get out of the country, you'd have a pretty good recession. So, costs a lot of money, destroys the social fabric, recession. That's one choice. Other end of the spectrum, give them a path to an earned legal status. Most people think that about 20% would leave. And then the remainder would, in a more orderly fashion, assimilate into the legal labor force. And that would have benefits to the U.S. economy and much lower costs.
The simple answer is to create a visa system that's available for all types of jobs. And we don't need to have a specific visa for every single job in the economy. We just need to allow the market to operate. Having a work visa that immigrants can apply for, regardless of whether it's agriculture or high tech, we need one across the board that immigrants can apply for and then use to come into the country legally. I think a lot of Americans actually get it. There are some who don't think that immigration is benefiting the country. Ultimately, we have to respect people's opinions and feelings on the issue, but the facts are that immigrants overwhelmingly benefit Americans rather than harm them.
We have to be willing to be honest with ourselves about who we are as a nation. How much do we value the things that we say that we stand for? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And who gets a shot at those values? We can't have a system with open borders, but we can have a system that is much more in tune with and respectful of those core principles. We have spent 250 plus years as that place that the rest of the countries in the world want to try to emulate. That's a really special thing that's happened to us, but it comes with a really, really important responsibility. Are we really being true to those values? We've drifted a long way from having an immigration system that we can be proud of, but it's not a long way to get back there.